spiritual forces. Again, we talked about angelology a while ago. And I did that just to get you where we're going right now. We had to study about angelology before we could understand the 7th chapter of the book of Exodus. Now we're going to go there and look. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I am the Lord. Speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and I will speak to you. But Moses said before the Lord, I am unskilled in speech, and how then will Pharaoh listen to me? Then the Lord said to him, I'll make you as God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and I will multiply his signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. Now, we're going to have a spiritual contest between demons and God. We're going to have a spiritual contest of demons here. The power of demons. And here we're going to have 10 plagues in Egypt. But before all this takes place now, we know back here that Jehovah, El Shaddai, appeared unto Moses, and he told him, I want you to go into the land. And Moses kept objecting because he didn't want to go back to Egypt. He had been basically killed an Egyptian. There was a warrant out for his arrest, dead or alive, and he didn't want to go back there. So God said, well, I'll tell you what to do. He said, how am I going to tell them, who are you? What is your name? He said, I am that I am. I am that I am. I said, I am that I am. I am the eternal God. And like in John 1:1. And so he said, well, how are they going to believe me? He said, take your rod. And by the way, according to Enoch, this was Aaron's rod. This was the rod that God gave to Aaron, not Aaron, but to Adam. And it had been passed down from generation to generation. And all the lineage and everything was on this rod. It was a very powerful rod. They looked at it as a rod of authority. And it had come down through all these ages. And Jethro had gotten a hold of this rod when he was down in Egypt because he was one of Pharaoh's consultants. And he got this rod and he went out and he stuck it in the ground. And no one could pull the rod out. This is like the sword and stone. No one could pull the rod out until the right man that was supposed to have that rod, that was supposed to be his rod, pulled it out, and Moses went out there and just pulled it out of the ground. It was like setting 10 yards of cement or something before, but he just pulled it out. He said, now, you know about the history of this rod. Throw that rod down on the ground. And that rod became a Nahash. A Nahash. A Nahash is a serpent. And that rod became a Nahash, a serpent, hissing and crawling. Now, rod, you know, the rod is long and skinny, and the serpent is the same way. So he threw it down, and he said, put your hand down, pick it up. And he picked it up, and it became a rod again. And then he said, take your hand and put it in your clothes, under your robe. And he put it under his robe, and he came out, and it was leprous, white as snow. He said, now put it back in there. He put it back in, and it became normal again. Now Moses is 80 years old. He's 80 years old. And so he goes down there and he said, I can't talk. And he said, don't worry about it. He said, I'm already calling. Aaron's going to meet you. Just go down there and just do what I tell you. Just do what I tell you, Moses. So he goes down there. And things change. Down there, we're in a land of demons. Egypt is a land full of demons. In the Bible, Egypt is a type of the world. And the world is full of demons. As God's children, we have angels and spirits protecting us. But demons are out there all over. Demons are doing the same thing to the evil side. You see an evil person that you know is evil, he's got powers behind him. Now this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is for real, okay? They found out a lot of conspiracy theories were true lately, in the last few years. All the way from assassinations to whatever. They weren't conspiracy theories, they were real. Now, we're going to come into the dominion of horrible spiritual forces. There are demons all over Egypt. There are fallen angels all through the land. And through the land, in false religious systems, sometimes there's great miracles and powers shown. And we're going to see them here. We're going to see these powers shown. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. Moses means to rescue. Aaron means light, or enlighten. When Pharaoh speaks to you saying, work a miracle. Now, Pharaoh is going to have miracle workers among him. Now, according to the book of Jasher, we know who these two people were, and they are Jannes and Jambres. And Paul reveals that in the New Testament. He said Jannes and Jambres. We did not know from the Bible who they were, but we know from the book of Jasher who they are. When Pharaoh speaks to you saying, work a miracle, then you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it may become, it says here, a serpent. So Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh, and thus they did just as the Lord commanded, and Aaron threw down his staff before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a tanin. A tanin. A dragon. It wasn't a serpent anymore. This is not a snake. This is a dragon. This is a supernatural dragon. In Chinese celebrations, they have this dragon. They had to have a dragon. They got all these people and with this dragon form, and they're all dancing around all over. That's a tanin, and it's breathing out fire. Remember, Maryland, when I went down to the Lone Pine Film History dinner down there, and we had a concert in the Rocks, and we sat there, and that next setting to us was a Jewish girl. And there's a lot of Jews in the movie industries, and anyway, this girl was sitting there, and Marilyn told her, my husband knows Hebrew. Oh, she does. All right, so she started asking me some questions. And she said, well, in the Bible, what difference would the Hebrew mean than what we have translation? I said, well, let me ask you something. Do you know what a nahash is? And she said, yeah, a serpent. I said, you know what a tanin is? And she said, yeah, that's smoke, fire, supernatural fire, dragons, breathing, fire-breathing dragon or something like that. And I said, okay. Now, I said, what did Moses throw down, or have Aaron throw down before Pharaoh? What did he become? She said, a nahash, a serpent. I said, no, it didn't. She said, what do you mean? It didn't. I said, it became a tanin. Really? That's a dragon or something. That's a fire-breathing dragon. I said, that's what it says. Oh, I never learned that in synagogue. They didn't pay what the original scripture said. Now, translations. The original scriptures are very important because they're God's holy, inspired word. So now, this rod became a dragon. We're talking about a spiritual contest here. Now, everything that Moses and Aaron would do, Satan would duplicate. Jannes and Jambres would duplicate it from the forces of darkness. Can Satan create? People say, well, Satan couldn't create. He just did. In this situation, he did. Satan, the powers of Satan, did create. Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh, and they did just as the Lord had commanded, and Aaron threw down his staff down before the Lord, Pharaoh his servant. It became a dragon, and Aaron and Moses are surprised. Everybody's surprised. Now, what does this Leviathan dragon represent? Well, out in the ocean, when Jonah was out in the ocean, there was a great fish. The term there is dog, in Hebrew, dog. This dog, it means to have fins and swim. What it means to swim and have fins. The dog. Dagon, the god Dagon, is a fish god. A god of the deep and the waters. Now, when Jonah took off in the wrong direction, God told him to go one way and he went the other way. He goes out there and he's out in the Mediterranean Sea. And he's going to Spain. And he's on this boat with a lot of people, and he's down in the bottom of the boat. It's a pretty good sized boat. It's not like a Titanic or something. It's a boat, but it's smaller than a canoe. Larger than a canoe, that is. He's down in the bottom of the boat, and there's a great storm coming up. And every time these people were very superstitious, everybody, they think a Leviathan in the deep is stirring up the waters. A Leviathan. Now, they told him he told them, you got to throw me into the water and sacrifice me because I'm the reason why God is causing the storm. And they threw him in the water, and the water is instantly calmed. And you know what these people on that boat did? They started sacrificing to Jehovah. Everybody that Jonah preached to got saved. He was the most unreliable, unconcerned prophet of all, rebellious prophet. But God used him tremendously. Now, God is going to fight, the power of God is going to fight the powers of Satan here. There's going to be 10 plagues, and this miracle here too. It means to smoke and to breathe fire. That's what that Tannin means. This is a fire-breathing dragon. Now you go back into the what we call the New Testament times, but even before that. Remember when Jesus was out on the Sea of Galilee out there, and the Leviathan, the deep, was stirring up the waters, and they had a great storm. They thought, these people are superstitious, they thought that every time out there on the Sea of Galilee or out in the ocean, every time a storm came, there was a Leviathan stirring up the deep. And there's more to that story. Jesus said, be still, shut up, and it became still. But out here, when you go back to Jewish legend and the legend of this, what a Tannin is, what a Leviathan is, they believed that at the bottom of the Sea of Galilee was the gates of hell, and that a Leviathan, a serpent, a gigantic dragon with fins and fire-breathing dragon, guarded the gates of hell down there. Later on, when Jesus dismissed the demons from the guy named Legion into the swine, they went and jumped into the water and they drowned themselves. And the people were afraid. They said, make him leave. We don't want him here. He's disturbing the peace. And yet he was showing his power over the demonic world. Those hogs have better sense than some of the people. They didn't decide not to live with those demons in them. Now we come back to Egypt, Egyptos. Egyptos, our word Egypt comes from the Greek word Egyptos. The word in Hebrew means Mitzrayim, the land of red mud and canal banks, because of the irrigated land. Now we're down here into one of the most advanced cultures in the world at that time. But it is demonically inspired. If you read the book of Enoch, you'll find out that when the angels married women, that they introduced into the human race tremendous powers and knowledge from the dark side of the world. Metallurgy, how to make swords. What they need to make a sword for, what they need to make a spear for, are bows and arrows. The animals weren't going to kill them. The animals were living at peace with mankind. They weren't vicious or anything. We didn't have wolves like wolves later after the ark landed. These animals all got along together. What were they doing with those? It said they were killing and eating animals and drinking their blood, and killing and eating people and drinking their blood. Wars. Spiritual forces always cause wars. And this is a spiritual contest down here. Then Pharaoh, now, in the Septuagint, the word dragon is drakon. Drakon. This becomes a dragon. A drakon. And it means to breathe smoke and fire. So as you see, every time I see one of those Chinese festivals, New Year festivals, where they have this dragon breathing smoke, I think about this. Because this is exactly what it's talking about. That's a Leviathan that they got out there. And the wise men and the sorcerers, and we know who they were, they're Jannes and Jambres. They also, the magicians of Egypt, did the same with their secret arts. They did the same with their powers of Satan. Demonic, spiritual powers. They turned Jannes and Jambres rods into dragons. When they threw a rod down, it says in King James they became serpents too, but they didn't become serpents. We're talking about like a monster. In Pharaoh's palace, there are 3 monsters on the floor. 3 supernatural creatures. Not 3 snakes. 3 dragons. Like 3 Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. And they're breathing fire. It says, for each one of them threw down his staff, and they turned into dragons. And Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart was hard, was hardened, and he did not listen to them. And the Lord said, then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is stubborn, and he refuses to let the people go. A contest of demons and angelic forces is taking place here. The last one was angelology. We know the angels exist. We know how powerful they are. We know they're supernatural. We know they never die. They cannot be killed. But evidently they can be injured somehow. They can feel pain because they fight. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he is going out to the water and station himself to meet him on the bank of the Nile River. And the Nile River was a god to them too. And here is demonic power in a river. Do you see these Chinese people worshiping Buddha? An image of a person made out of stone or whatever. In that stone there is power. There is power that draws them to them. There are spiritual forces in these rocks. They're not gods, but they're spiritual forces. Go to Pharaoh in that morning, and he's going out to water. And you shall take your hand and the staff that had been turned into the Nahash and the Tanim, and you will say to him, the Lord God of the Hebrews sent me to say to you, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness, but behold, you have not listened until now, still. And thus said the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. I am Jehovah. I am it uses the word Baal. They worshipped Baal. But the word Baal means Lord and Master. He said, I am Baal. I am the true Baal. I am the Lord. I'm the true Lord, and I am the true Master. And I will strike the water that is in the Nile with a staff that is in my hand, and it shall be turned into blood. Blood. And when you look at blood, you see death. you see death. Every time, and I do this a lot now lately, and since I'm old and my skin is fragile, I leave a trail of blood wherever I'm working, it seems like. And that's life. In blood is life. I leave a little bit of my life here and there. A little blood. Marilyn has to wash my clothes and gets the blood out. And the fish and the dog. And remember, they worship fish gods now. And the dog, the fish god, the fish that are in the Nile will die. I'm going to overcome all the fish gods. All of the swimmers, is what I said, swimmers. And the Nile shall become foul. It will become foul. Their god shall become smell. They will stink. Their god will stink. And the Egyptians will find the difficulty in drinking water from the Nile. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch it out over the waters of Egypt. Now remember, in this staff there is a tremendous power of God, isn't there? Jasher said that when God created the heavens and the earth, he held that rod in his hand, and later on he gave it to Adam. God, at one time, Lucifer was over the material creation of God. But when he sinned, God created Adam and he put him over that, and he gave him that rod to protect the world from such as this. He gave him that rod. And it was handed down and handed down and handed down, according to Jasher, till Moses got the rod. It's the powerful rod. In that rod is the power of God. Take your staff and stretch it out over the waters of Egypt, and over the rivers, and over the streams, and over the pools, and over all of the reservoirs of water. This is an irrigated, the land, Mitzrayim means the land of red mud and canal banks. They had canal banks and reservoirs. They irrigated. Everybody else were dry land farmers all over. They just waited for the Lord to rain and bring the crop. But these people watered the crops. That's why they had water down there. That's why they had grain in Egypt when nobody else had it. They still had the Nile River. The Nile River was their God, their life giver. And over all the reservoirs of water, that they may become blood, and there shall be blood throughout all the land of Mitzrayim, red banks and red mud and canal banks, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. I'm going to turn blood in everything. Now, there is a red tide. Remember when we saw red tide, Maryland, out in the ocean?
Yeah.
And that's hard to fish and everything. You know what about red tides, Larry? There is a natural red tide. There was a natural red tide in Egypt. The Nile River would turn reddish with algae. But God took a phenomena that was limited and turned it into an unlimited phenomenon. And it became real blood. Not just algae, but real blood. The fish gods will become foul. Everything will become bad. No, Moses and Aaron did even as the Lord had commanded them. And remember, the word Lord there means master. Baal had commanded them, and he lifted up the staff, and he struck the water that was in the Nile, and the side of Pharaoh, and the side of the serpent, and all the water that was in the Nile was turned into blood in the river now. And the fish that were in the Nile, and the Nile became foul, and the Egyptians could not drink the water of the Nile, and the blood was throughout all the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same thing with their secret arts. They turned water into blood. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them as the Lord had said. And Pharaoh turned and went into his house with no concern even for this. So all the Egyptians dug around the Nile for water to drink, for they could not find a drink of water in all the land. And 7 days passed before the Lord, when the Lord had struck the Nile. Now, through all of this, Satan is imitating God and all his powers. He's imitating God. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, Thus saith the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse, to let them go, Lord, I'm going to smash your whole territory with frogs." And frogs was Hittite was also a god. Hittite was a god. Now the Nile will swarm with frogs and will come up and go into your house and into your bedroom and in your bed and into the house of the servants and then your people and into your ovens and into the kneading bowls. They're going to be into everything that you sleep or eat or try to clean yourself. And remember, the Egyptians were a very clean people. They used a lot of water, and now they didn't have any water to clean themselves. Maybe they had to do like the French and use perfumes. Into your ovens and into your kneading bowls, and so the frogs will come up on you and your people and all your servants. And then the Lord said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers and over the streams and over the pools, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt." Now, there were frogs that did that. Frogs came. But now we have a great magnification of this. Supernatural. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land with Egypt. Now, right now, we got a plague of grasshoppers, don't we? Here. You go out there and they're jumping all over the place. They're magnifying. I lived here. There was crickets do that. There were scorpions did that. We had the plague of rabbits. We had a plague of all different kind of things in the last 70 years that I lived in this country. And you have this out there in Old River one time, and off the Taft, they had a plague of rats, didn't they? And when there was so many rats out there that when you drove your car down the road, they slid all over, running over these rats. And they did the same thing with grasshoppers. And the magicians did the same with their secret arts. They did the same. They created frogs. They multiplied frogs. A lot of people say, well, Satan can't create. Well, what in the world is he doing here if he didn't create? Satan created false religions, didn't he? He created leaders of false religions. He inspired false religions, and he inspired this false religion here. And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, "Entreat the Lord till he move the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, and they may sacrifice to the Lord." And Moses said to Pharaoh, the honor is yours. Tell me when shall I entreat for you and your servants and your people, that the frogs may be destroyed. And here is a sermon that Dr. Martin Luther Canevin preached one time. Dr. Martin Van Buren Canevin preached a sermon, "One More Night with the Frogs." And it's on the website. One more night with the frogs. Let me have one more night with the frogs. From your houses, and then let them be left in the Nile, where they belong. Then he said, tomorrow, and he said, may it be according to your word, that you may know that the Lord, there is none like the Lord, our God, none like the Master, our God, the Baal. Our Lord is a real master of the universe. And the frogs will depart from you and your houses and your servants and your people, and they will be left only in the Nile. Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried unto the Lord concerning the frogs which had inflicted upon Egypt. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses and the courts and the fields, so that he piled them up in heaps. There were mountains of frogs. Now, I used to go frog gigging. Ever go frog hunting, Larry? Yeah. I'd go frog gigging. You went frog hunting too, Marilyn. And I would get some of those frogs I got were this long, like this. They were gigantic. They had frogs like turkeys and chicken legs. And I'd cook them, And Brother Hubbard, Dr. Hubbard, came to my house and preached for me, and I always took good care of him. I took care of his car and everything else. I changed his oil in his car. I even told him how to turn his heater on his car one time. He would carry a rag with him, and he had a little Datsun car, and he wiped the windshield off all the way from Lancaster to Bellflower, California, doing this. He said, Brother Jim, he said, there's something wrong with my car. He said, I can't turn the heater on. It won't work. I went in there and I flipped the switch over and I turned the blower on and started the car and it was blowing. Man! He said, is that what you got to do to turn that thing on? I said, yeah, there it is. He said, man, I've been going 15 years I've been doing this. Well, got it going. Miracles. That was not a miracle. That was just turning the switch on. But now here, the magicians are imitating everything that God does. Tomorrow, may it be according to your word. And when the Lord saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart. He hardened his heart. Volition. He hardened his own heart and did not listen to them as the Lord had said. Now he's going to send another plague. This plague is like lice. 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 Now frogs live. The fish are living beings. The Nile is a river, but in that is life. Now he kills all the life in the river. And now something happens here. These are actually gnats, not lice. Gnats. Gnats. And the Lord, and gnats bite. Yeah, we got little flies here, little gnats that are so small you can hardly see them, but they bite like thunder. They really bite hard. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, that it may become gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. It says lice in King James, but it doesn't say that in the original language. Then he did so, and Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff, and he struck the dust of the earth, and there became gnats on man and on beast, and on all the dust of the earth became gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. This covered with gnats. Now I went out here, Sharon was up here with us a few weeks ago, and she would get out and walk her dog every day, and she'd go by there and she said, Jim, there's a whole lot of ants out there. I went out there around this one tree, and the ants were this thick, were crawling over each other, and they were all flying ants. All over out there, just all over out there. And I went out there and I sprayed them, and then I had to go spray them again later. I killed them, but they were just millions of ants, just thick. It was about like 12 or 15 feet wide and 2 inches thick of ants. And this is going to be like gnats like that. And the magicians tried their secret arts to bring forth gnats, but they could not. So the natural man beast, they couldn't do this. Now, people say they couldn't create life. Well, they already had created life. We know that. They created life in a staff. And so why couldn't they do this? Because God didn't allow them to, that's why. God didn't allow their spiritual forces to do it. Then the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. The Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them, and the Lord had said. Now the Lord said to Moses, arise early in the morning and present yourself before Pharaoh as he comes out to the water, and say to him, thus saith the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. For if you will not let my people go, I will send swarms of insects upon you. Now they already had these biting gnats. They already had frogs. And I'm gonna send swarms of insects on you, and on your servants, and on your people, and into your houses, and the houses of Egyptians shall be full of swarms of insects, and also the ground on which they dwell. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen. I'm going to show you that I am God. I'm going to show you that I am the real Baal. I'm the real master, because I'm going to make a separation between you and my people. You're going to have insects in your land, and my people will not have insects in their land. In order that you may know that I, the Lord, the Master, so in the midst of this land, and I will put a division between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall occur. Then the Lord did so, and there became great swarms of insects into the house of Pharaoh, and the houses of his servants, and the land was laid waste, because the swarms of insects in all the land of Egypt. Remember, these are a very clean people. These people take baths every day, 2 or 3 times. They bathe, they bathe, they bathe. They clean, they shave their heads, they shave their arms, they shave themselves. They don't want any disgusting thing on them. And now they're filled, their whole world is filled with filth. Insects, frogs. The river is turned into blood. Go sacrifice to your God within the land. And Moses said, it is not right to do so, for we shall sacrifice to the Lord our God what is an abomination to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice what is an abomination to the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not stone us? We must go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, sacrifice to the Lord our God, as he commands us, as he demands us to do this. Pharaoh said, I will let you go, that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, only you shall not go very far. Make supplication for me, pray for me. And then Moses, behold, I am going from you, and I shall make supplication to the Lord, and the swarms of insects may depart from Pharaoh and from his servants and from his people tomorrow. Only do not let Pharaoh deal deceitfully again, and not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. So Moses went out from Pharaoh, and then the devil's partners enticed him. The demons enticed Pharaoh. There it worked. God wouldn't let them make gnats in the land like that, not gnats, but this type of insect in the land like they did. But they're busy in the mind of Pharaoh. And the Lord said, as Moses asked, and removed the swarms of insects from Pharaoh and from his servants, from his people, not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also. He hardened his heart. Demonic influence, but he hardened his heart. Did not let the people go. Did not let the people go. What a story, huh? A story of rebellion, a story of supernatural powers. Can Satan do miracles? Yes, he does. Can he do it in the world today? Is he the founder of false religions? Has he confused people all over the world in following leaders instead of God? Yes, he has. All down to, are spiritual forces at work in the world where we live today? Yes, they are. Our Father, we send out this message, and hoping and praying that you use it for all over the world, that people may see your loving care for your people, and the powers of Satan are real, but your powers are greater. Father, please use the message for your honor and glory. Please forgive me where I fail you. In Jesus' name I